Hey, it's Damon from Damon in History and More. Today we're going to talk about Gallipoli and how ultimately it was a failure. Um, anyways, I have a map of Gallipoli and the campaign. So as you can see, we have, hang on, this is the British, this is the Australian front. But before we get into that, we have to go back a little bit. Winston Churchill said we needed to take Gallipoli because Gallipoli was a huge point of the First World War. And so they take, Gallipoli, but it's not so easy. See it, they bring a whole fleet because they thought the Ottomans were not very good fighters. They decided that we're going to bring old warships, old dreadnoughts, instead of the new dreadnoughts. And that would be a sort of a downfall. They would bring a bunch of British, Australian, New Zealanders, all that. I think even some French. But here's where things got a little bad. Is that there's a minefield here. So the fleet comes in through here, but realizes these mines. Some of them were, some dreadnoughts were just as close as 1 mile off the coast of Turkey. And so one gets hit, and they realize there's a minefield, and so they retreat back here. And so this is what the operations are. They go back here, and then some go here. That said, they also had artillery that was, peppering them. This campaign went on for 10 months. It was really a stalemate because at the time the Western Front was really a stalemate. It was 1915. It's just like sit in your trench and hope to not get killed. But it's different here because it's the desert and this is Turkey. Now I don't know much about Turkey or even the Ottoman Empire. I haven't really researched it, but I thought how Gallipoli was like the coolest thing. So that's why I'm making this video. Anyways, that said, they go in through here. They put their little boats. They got lifeboats and row them in. There's a shit ton of dreadnoughts, a lot of artillery. And they get the Australians, obviously, there. The Anzac Force, as they're well known, with the blue, the blue shorts, the one hats folded up, that, everyone knows what those are. I think anyone who's played Battlefield knows who those are. Battlefield 1, by the way. So, they go in. It wasn't, obviously, like I said, it wasn't the best. So they go and retreat. And they set up camp here. Start unloading men all throughout here. They do that, and they take over pretty fast. And they're told to dig in. This is important because this is where they start making the trenches, and they dig with the shovels, whatever, and they fight while fighting. But the problem was that a lot of water couldn't be getting there, because you have to understand, it's not like today where we have helicopters and airplanes that can just fly in supplies. It wasn't like that. They had to be a runner. They had to ask for the supplies. Supplies had to be granted, and then a bunch of men would have to grab the supplies, either take it on trucks, but it would be pretty hard to take it on trucks here. So you would have to walk with all that supplies, like ammunition or water. So all that stuff had to be given to the soldiers that needed it. Right. So that said, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say that too often. They go and they take the beach. It's hard, and in fact, a lot of people died there on the beach. And I think that's one of the reasons why I made this video, is because I thought how cool that was, but how sad and kind of tragic it was that they slaughtered all those men to get onto the beach. But they do take the beach eventually. And the Australians, the Anzacs, they go by lifeboat and they row towards it. And they go at nighttime and they take the beach, whatever. And they move up a little bit. They move up, get more territory. And then, unfortunately, they make this very bad mistake, which is one of the most tragic things a part of Gallipoli, and probably one of the reasons why they failed the mission, was because they had an attack plan, because at that point in time it was a stalemate, and it really was them just fighting it out, and it broke out into trench warfare. So they were not getting anything done. It was just like the Western Front. So they planned an attack. However, the Ottomans saw their airplane flying along, and they were just like, no, we know. And so they didn't have artillery. The Ottomans at this point do not have artillery, which is surprising for the First World War. You would think they would, but they had artillery on the coasts, so they'd have to move those up. Couldn't do that, could they? So they fight there. They have to remember there's only 4,889 British troops, 6,000 Australian troops. Sorry, I'm reading the script. 16,000 New Zealanders, that's a lot of men, but if you run out of men, you have to go all the way across the world to get more men. You have to understand that it's the Mediterranean. So where that is, it's fairly hard to get to where they need to go to get the soldiers. Obviously they have troop transports, and hell, they even had the sister ship of Titanic, Olympic, and they did that. It was painted gray. Maybe I do a video on that later. But that said, they have a lot of soldiers. This war goes on for 10 months. Well, not the war, but the campaign. Campaign goes on for 10 months, and it just is terrible. It's awful. A lot of men get killed for no reason. But one thing is very important to know here. The Ottomans and, the Allies were very respectable. They really respected both sides. Both knew that, okay, there's a bunch of dead people in this desert, and it's stinking or whatever. So we're both going to, we're going to bury the bodies. And they both did that, which is weird, right? You would think that they wouldn't do that because, enemy's enemy, but it's not like the Western Front. So, the wave, they raise the flag, wounded on a trench, we need to get them. So they do that. And at both sides of the war, we're very keen to protecting the dead or wounded, because they understood that it was a hard war. So because medicine isn't like it today. It is basically in its infancy, if you will. It was very crude. A lot of people lost their legs because they got shot in the leg, whatever. So anyways, they fight for maybe a couple months, and they'll decide, we're going to take this area. We're going to take this area. This is the defining point of Gallipoli. This is what really set them back and it's what, like, a lot of morale was lost because of this. Now, they didn't tell this in the newspapers, but they did. The soldiers there that experienced it, they thought, "Fuck the generals, screw the generals. I can't believe the generals are making us do this." Miscommunication is a big thing in this part of it. Anyways, so the Anzac forces move up, and dreadnoughts, they bomb the crap out of it. They bomb the crap out. And you have to understand, when you get artillery in World War One, not artillery, when you get shelled, they go and they hide in the little bunkers so you don't get hit, obviously, because you don't want to get killed for no reason. So, they're bombing it pretty good, and they're keeping the Ottomans, down so they can't move up and, have machine guns ready. However, a huge thing is they stopped. 7 minutes go by, and then it's like, okay, now we're gonna go. And so the guy goes, sends the force wave in to get annihilated. Because the Ottomans had time to get to the machine gun posts, get to their rifle posts, and they just annihilated them. And it's kind of sad, because that's what happened in the movie Gallipoli. And that's how a lot of men died. Right there on the trench, and they didn't even make it like 30 meters. They just dead, and it's kind of sad. That's really sad, for sure. But not all of it was a loss. Before that, a Anzac force did take a trench, but that's really all to it as far as I know. I haven't done as much research on Gallipoli as I would like. I would love to make a better video for you guys, but whatever. So as I was, was saying, and I'm gonna actually mention the Britannic, because it goes on for 10 months, and Britannic's actually a big part of it. So a lot of men get slaughtered. Generals don't kill. They do call it off after 3 waves. 3 waves, they call it off. But the general doesn't kill. Well, not general. The senior commander doesn't kill, because he's just, sitting down, drinking tea. New Zealanders are very cowardly people right now. They're not really moving up like they should. If you ask me, the real heroes of this campaign were the Australians. They suffered through a lot. And, they left more men than they came back with. And so, out of the 60,000, okay, I take that back when it comes to the more men. They lost 20,000, 6,000, 2,000, 6,000. 20,000, 6,000. So I'm not good with numbers. I'm sorry. That's my bad. But they lost a lot of men. You can look it up. Probably better than I could do. So, lose all those men. You gotta give them a little bit of respect for that. Just alone. And so, they did take the points, and it was a brutal war. But all of World War One was, so it's not that surprising. Dreadnought gets torpedoed here and there, However, near the end, bring the map again. Do you see those little 2 lines right here? Those are actually artillery guns. So, near the end, the 10 months go by, and it's a stalemate still. But they bring those artillery guns to make it not a stalemate anymore. And now the generals are realizing, because, Winston Churchill told them to do this. The generals realizing they need to get out of there, because if they don't, they will die. Because they don't have artillery, or they have the dreadnought. And the dreadnought's not forward enough to hit them. So, they make these little rifle things, wooden rifle things. And so it has time delayed, and they put a bunch of traps, put a bunch of dummies, make sure that the Ottoman soldiers don't think that they have just retreated, even though they are retreating. So they have this massive retreat, and I think it's one of the biggest ones the British have ever done, besides Dunkirk. So, that said, they all go back, and they retreat into the jungle, and they just leave. I'm pretty sure it took maybe 3 days for everyone to leave, but they all left. And Gallipoli, done, 10 months, gone. But it was a bloody campaign, and it was pretty futile. But if they did win, I think World War One would have ended much sooner, in my opinion. Now, the HMHS Britannic. It is in the Aegean Sea. Now, you have to understand, Naples. They probably got a lot of soldiers from Gallipoli that were wounded and needed to go home. And they put them on this hospital ship because they'd put them in Egypt. But now they're evacuating, so all the wounded soldiers go on this massive hospital ship. It gets sunk off the Aegean Sea, the coast of, I forget, but it sinks in 800 feet of water. 30 people die. It's a tragedy for the White Star Line, of course. But this is about Gallipoli, so we're not going to talk too much about that. Ultimately, Gallipoli was a major loss. I think around 2,000 people died. 200,000 soldiers died on all the Allied fronts. But amazingly, I've heard that it also comes from both sides. Both sides lost that many men. Well, similar amounts. So ultimately, Gallipoli was a disaster. And I think a big part of that was because of what they did, and because of not shelling for another 7 minutes. They probably would have won for sure, but they didn't because of what they did, and they should have won that battle. It was really easy, because they didn't do that. They lost. A lot of soldiers have PTSD forever, and very sad. Winston Churchill, after this, would become a regular soldier, resigned from the whatever they have. I'm not the best with the British, but they would retreat, and Gallipoli would be a failure, and the Ottomans would take it back, obviously, but they all left by then, so it's good. I'm gonna have to, do some more research on Gallipoli, maybe make a follow-up video, because this isn't my forte. Really, I can only explain like maybe half of the story, because I don't do as much research as I probably should. But whenever I can, I'll do the research, because I go to school, so I have to learn something. So I go whenever I have time. I'll do some research on whatever. That said, like and subscribe if you want more World War One, maybe World War Two videos.